So, guys, I personally believe that the relationships between the Russian population and their leaders deserves a separate horror movie. Russians never demand much from their leaders. Usually it's vice versa. Leaders demand much from Russians, but they always have this kind of silent agreement that as long as the Russian population gives up their freedoms, their rights to the Kremlin leader, he provides them some basic needs, some stability, as long as they remain apolitical and do not ask questions. And this kind of relations helped Putin rule Russia for 25 years. But now, after 4 years of the exhausting war, after a lot of mistakes inside Russia, more and more problems, ordinary basic problems, keep accumulating in literally every region of the Russian Federation. You don't need to Google anymore trying to find some, malfunctions of their utilities or problems with salaries. It literally happens everywhere. I spent less than half an hour reading about, products that disappear from the shelves of supermarkets in Belgorod and similar problems in the far north of Russia with logistics, with the delivery of the basic problems. Salaries, that's a problem everywhere. The number of debtors is growing in Siberia. They have no money to give to those people who work for the state. And they also think about these tickets that people will receive instead of money to be able to eat. And this resembles the years before the collapse of the USSR. I remember my parents receiving such tickets and me playing as a child that I'm a shop assistant with these papers that they easily gave me because they were worth nothing. And cold is in Ukraine because of Russian strikes on our energy infrastructure, and Russian energy infrastructure is destroyed with Putin's mismanagement. And again, thousands of people in Irkutsk, thousands of people in Moscow region, like literally very close to the Kremlin. And this happens everywhere, every day. So we may say that finally the ordinary life of apolitical Russians inside their enormously large country that definitely does not need any new territories became quite unbearable. This means that this silent contract between the Kremlin dictator and his population is obviously broken, and the consequences might be very bloody. That's exactly what happened, for example, in Russia back in 1917. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat of the Kremlin regime that has already started and they actually fuel that from inside, subscribe and do share these videos to spread the truth. Unfortunately, many people know very little about the modern days in Russia, the Russian history, to be able to provide necessary arguments when you think whether we should appease Putin or defeat him. Of course, defeat because he is the weakest ever and his own population is very dissatisfied with the performance. He keeps lying on TV, speaking about the success of the Russian military production, and actually there are no other industries that he can boast, but even their military production failed to protect Maduro. It was Russian air defense that did not save the situation, and other regimes that were super dependent on the Kremlin saw this, and I'm sure the consequences will be bad even for this only branch of the Russian economy that was working on export. But perhaps the problems with these basic needs, like products, like salaries, like heating and electricity at home, tell more than any other numbers coming from the Ministry of Finance. So, for example, today all over the Russian Telegram channels, people shared photos of Belgorod supermarkets. You know, Belgorod is an active war zone inside Russia. Another great victory of Vladimir Putin, who began this war as a blitzkrieg, as a way to defend Russia, and actually brought war to dozens of regions where otherwise it would have never started. So in Belgorod, people have serious shortages with basic products. Similar situation we know is in the far north of Russia, but there they have problems with logistics and delivery. The gasoline crisis influences the trips to such remote regions of the Russian Federation, plus, you know, the aviation collapse causes a lot of these logistics problems, because many things were delivered to Russia using aircraft, and now they don't have aircraft left. They keep reintroducing old Soviet crap, but you know, it keeps falling. So in Belgorod, in far north, they talk about basic products disappearing from the shelves of the supermarket. In other cities, they still have products, but they started putting them in plastic cases, even butter, because of the prices and this huge inflation and problems with the salaries. And here we come to another very Soviet-style problem when the state institutions, the state companies were not able to pay people money, and they did not have this money. And a similar situation now is in Siberia. Siberia is a region with a great potential to become free one day. They tried that in the 90s, in 2000s even sometimes. And I'm sure that this understanding that Kremlin only sucks their money out, their resources out, and conscripts their people and brings nothing back, might be a very big motivation and create a lot of problems to the Putin's regime. And they actually want to introduce tickets for which you can get some food, you can exchange them in some basic products, and this definitely shouts about the success of Putin's economic strategy. And I'm sure they will not introduce any new bright people into the management of the country. And this makes me super proud that even in times of the big war, we do that. And our new Minister of Defense, Fedorov, is a very educated and at the same time very modern-minded person. Hopefully he will solve this problem with Russians using Starlink, and now he's exchanging messages on X with Musk. You all know how I feel about that American billionaire, but I cannot imagine something similar happening from the side of Gerasimov or Belousov, and this is also important for the strength and security of a country. And right now the frosts are really hard and the temperatures are really low, not only in Ukraine but also in Russia, and more their regions suffer from lack of heating. Here in Ukraine, this situation is similar, but the reason is very different. They target our infrastructure. They did that during all the winter, trying to freeze people, to make us surrender, totally misunderstanding the mindset of Ukrainians. And trust me, the spring will come and Russia will be defeated. But a similar experience now have a lot of people in Irkutsk, which is in a very cold part of Russia, in Moscow region, very close to the Kremlin itself, and no solution because they have no money in regional budgets, no money in the federal budget to fund the necessary repairs, to fund the maintenance, and maybe even people who are supposed to repair these things are sent to the meat grinders on the front line because not that many volunteers. So honestly, every Russian now feels this war in their pockets, on their streets, in their heating and electricity systems, on the shelves of their shops. And perhaps they do want to hear at least something from their Kremlin goblin. They want to find some explanation, some promises, and they get nothing. He keeps boasting about the success of the special military operation, keeps reporting about Kupiansk taken, like they are trying to take the city a year and a half, and they are talking about this city a year and a half, and they've lost a lot of soldiers, lost a lot of money, and gained nothing. And Putin keeps talking about the export of the Russian weapons when that's not exactly what Russians want to ask him. And honestly, I don't know, is there any solution for them from inside? I do know what's the solution from outside: to keep demilitarizing Russia, to keep defeating Russia until the full collapse of the Kremlin regime. Let me know in the comments below, do you believe that Russians can finally start protecting themselves, start speaking for the problems they experience, even if they don't care about the war crimes committed by their country? Do they at least care about their own salaries, their own heating, and their own on empty shelves that greatly resemble the ones back in the USSR. So to some extent, Putin is successfully restoring the Soviet Union, but fortunately for us, just in this last years of that communist monster. Subscribe to know more updates and to truly understand what people inside our enemy country are talking about. That's important in any kind of war. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Discord, Substack, almost said Starbucks, Substack. You will find the links in the description of this video, same as the link to our merch shop. Remember to follow me on Anna Danilchuk new channel, where we discuss why Russians are super worried for the Russian army. And thank you so much for your kind comments, for your continued support, for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels, but most importantly, thank you for standing with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!